Hello everyone, Brian Kibler here with StarCityGames.com, and as you can see on your screen, I'm going to be playing Temur. It's been a while since I've recorded a video. Both have been not super happy with the state of Magic Online and sort of bored of playing the old formats, but now that Khans of Tarkir is online, I'm going to be back in recording action. So this is the new version of the Temur deck that I posted in my most recent article. If you haven't read that, you should check it out. But so the sort of key elements of this deck is that you're playing just an aggressive deck. The format revolves largely around Abzan and Jeskai as the sort of two major decks in the field. Mono Red has recently sort of risen to prominence as well, and as a result of that, I've actually made some modifications to the previous versions of this deck that I was playing. But basically, this deck is built around using really efficient threats. The most efficient of which is Savage Knuckleblade. This guy's the best card in the deck. He is incredibly powerful, super effective whether you play him as a 3-drop, as a 4-drop, or higher. Be able to just, as a 4/4 for the 3, it's pretty good. We had Loxodon Smiter, saw a lot of play, even when its ability wasn't super relevant just because it was a 4/4 for 3 mana. And Knuckleblade has that, plus it can become a 6/6 if you pump it, can get haste, can dodge removal. It's just super, super good. Rattleclaw Mystic is a great way to ramp into Savage Knuckleblade. One question I've gotten a lot of times about this deck is why I play Rattleclaw Mystic instead of Sylvan Caryatid. And the reason is that you want creatures that can attack. This is an aggressive deck. This deck is trying to reduce your opponent's life total to 0, and in order to do that, getting a couple hits in here and there with Rattleclaw Mystic, those add up. Plus, the morph ability of Rattleclaw Mystic is actually pretty interesting when you do have Ashclad Phoenix in your deck, because you can have some sort of deception there as to what you actually have in play when you have multiple different morph creatures. Not to mention the fact that the flip ability gives you a little bit of extra kick on Crater's Claws. This is one of the best cards in the deck. Probably second only to Knuckleblade, I would say. Maybe it's not as good as we're talking newer cards. Nothing's nearly as good as an Elvish Mystic. Though in this deck, Elvish Mystic isn't necessarily as good as it is somewhere else. But Crater's Claws is really important because it offers you the ability to have a removal spell that can be a cheap removal spell against aggressive decks that can also just win the game against control decks or other mid-range decks. The ability to pick off a creature early on, spend 1 mana when you have a 4-power creature in play, and kill something like Goblin Rabblemaster or an opposing mana creature. That's a really really big deal, particularly because green mana ramp decks often don't really have great ways to sort of take back tempo. They're good at playing from ahead and not as good at playing from behind. And Crater's Claw is a card that gives you back that tempo. You can use your X is 0 with a 4-power creature in play. Sort of get back the play when you're kind of behind. The main difference from this version from a lot of other previous versions that I've played is I only have 2 copies of Temur Charm here. And I've also gone to the full 4 copies of Ashclad Phoenix and Pelucranos. Basically, I just want to be able to ramp into a big guy quickly, or just play big guys quickly. I have the 16 guys here. The 4 Boon Satyr, 4 Knuckleclaw, 4 Phoenix, 4 Pelucranos. All of them trigger Ferocious for Heir of the Wilds and Crater's Claw, as well as Stubborn Denial out of the sideboard, which I'll get to in a moment. But I had Stormbreath Dragons in some of the early versions of this deck. I just wasn't really a fan. Stormbreath Dragon costs 5 mana, which is a lot of mana. And in a world where so many decks are playing Stoke the Flames, paying 5 mana for a creature that was going to frequently die to opposing Stoke, and often Stoke didn't even cost them 4 mana. Often Stoke costs them, effectively 2 mana or 1 mana even, or sometimes 0 mana. That's just a really awkward situation to be in, and the expensive cards in this deck are Pelucranos, which is huge, so it doesn't die to Stoke, or a lot of other damage-based removal that's very popular right now. And then Ashclad Phoenix, which doesn't die to most removal spells. Ashclad Phoenix is really interesting because it gives you the ability to it's a 4-power evasive threat. That's a big deal. You want to be able to get in damage, being able to get in damage flying over your opponent's blockers. Things like Courser and Caryatid is very effective at helping you get damage in. It's also very nice to bestow Boon Satyr on it because of exactly that. But it's also nice that you are able to play something of an attrition game. A lot of times, it's not necessarily even an attrition game, really, because a lot of times, you know, your opponent will leave up mana to kill your creature during your end step, and you play a creature. They're like, okay, kill your creature, untap, do this. If that creature is Ash Cloud Phoenix, your opponent's play is so much worse. A lot of times, you know, your opponent will have, say, mana up for Hero's Downfall, or in some cases, you know, like Bile Blight, Murderous Cup, whatever. And you know, and you play a creature. It doesn't really, the exchange doesn't go well for you because your opponent is able to actually effectively use their tempo. You know, they're taking your turn away by using the mana that they left up on their turn. When you're playing a creature, when you're playing either something that doesn't die to that, or a creature that, you know, like Phoenix, will absorb their removal spell and they don't get full efficiency out of it, it's a big deal. I've been really, really impressed by Phoenix the more that I've played with it. You do end up in a situation where you have, you know, Boon Satyr and Phoenix, which are 3 and 4 cast creatures that do die to cheap removal spells. They do die to burn spells. Phoenix sort of dies. You know, if your opponent uses a burn spell on Phoenix, if you flip it face down and you're, you know, able to get any value out of that body, which most of the time you are, it's still, you know, a pretty good deal. But yeah, I'm a big fan. I've been really liking it. Decided to go up to 4 to try that max number. I have 1 copy of Sarkhan. I've been pretty impressed by Sarkhan. I actually previously had a 2nd copy of Sarkhan in the sideboard. Right now I just switched that to the 4th Stubborn Denial. Because I was only able to find 1 copy of Sarkhan easily on Magic Online, and the trading on Magic Online is not my favorite part of it, so I didn't want to go through trying to find another one. And also just Stubborn Denial is one of the best cards. One of the big reasons to play this deck is how powerful Stubborn Denial is. And if you're playing against any sort of control deck, any sort of removal-based deck, being able to, you know, stick a threat and Stubborn Denial their removal spell, particularly given how much removal spells cost right now. It's a big thing about this format that's important to keep in mind is that there are no Doomblades. You know, there's, as far as removal goes, there's stuff like Hero's Downfall, there's Abzan Charm, there's all these things which don't really give you a huge mana advantage when you actually use them to kill your opponent's creature. That's one of the reasons that I think that a deck that is mostly creatures can be, you know, pretty competitive right now, because the removal spells just aren't that good. So if I'm, you know, ramping into big creatures and you have to spend your turn to deal with them, you know, and I can have a guy who's getting hits in, or I have a Temur Charm that's able to stop your big, you know, your big sort of trump card, or a Stubborn Denial, or whatever. Those mana exchanges go profitably for me because I'm plinking away with, say, Arrow of the Wilds or that Rattleclaw Mystic that I use to initially ramp into my creatures, or, you know, I'm flipping up Ash Cloud Phoenix, etc., just hitting with the Morph version because you have to kill the face up one, whatever. Basically, I think that removal spells right now just aren't that good, and I like to be in a position where I'm the one casting a significant number of threats. And in particular, when those removal spells are inefficient, something like Stubborn Denial becomes even better, because your opponent has to spend much more sort of percentage of their available mana in order to actually try to deal with your threats, and you're able to counter it for just 1. Other sideboard cards, Magma Spray, Lightning Strike, and Arc Lightning. This sort of package here is a response to the increased popularity of Mono Red. Mono Red's always been pretty popular on Magic Online just because it's a cheap deck, and people can put it together pretty easily and play in events. I did lose to Mono Red, unfortunately, playing for top 8 of Grand Prix LA, which is all the more reason that I should just jam my sideboard full of removal spells. But specifically, Magma Spray is, you know, one of the best options against the aggressive red decks. I like Arc Lightning as a way to sort of you know, kill multiple guys. There's a lot of those decks have a bunch of 1 toughness guys. Some of them even have Hordling Outburst, the ability to kill, you know, a Rabble Master and its token, the ability to kill, you know, a Frenzy Goblin and a, you know, Arena Athlete or whatever for a single card is pretty valuable. I still think the Magma Sprays, you know, the cheap efficient stuff is what you want the most of. And this, you know, sideboarding this in with the Lightning Strike. The Lightning Strike, by the way, being in the sideboard, is a nod to Jeskai, because it is by far the best spell that is available against other Jeskai decks, or against Jeskai decks for this deck. Because being able to kill either Rabble Master or Mantis Rider for just 2 mana that you can leave up, you know, if you're on the draw, you just say go on turn 2 and kill their guy at the end step, because they really need to be able to, you know, try and play the tempo game there. So Lightning Strike's your best option. Anyway, that is pretty much it for talking about this. Let's go and see how it spins. We're going to play in some 8-player queues or 2-player queues, depending on what's available, because daily events never actually line up with my schedule, and they take forever. So let's go see this deck in action.